All right, let's go ahead and get started. I am so excited to announce our lab leader today is Hadley Wickham. Hadley, would you like to introduce yourself really quick?
Hi, I'm Hadley, Chief Scientist at Posit, and I make R packages.
Hadley makes our packages. No big deal. Okay, so Hadley, what are you going to be doing with us today? And would you like to go ahead and share your screen?
So I am going to do a live analysis of this week's Tidy Tuesday data, which I suspect was influenced by this event.
Slight suspicion. Can everybody tell Hadley if his RStudio screen is big enough? Because it's pretty small to me. Help me out, y'all. Tan says he has zero ideas for conf talks these days. Are you conf talked out, Tan? Yeah, a little bigger won't hurt. So let's go just slightly larger and we'll be good.
Okay, I did make it one bigger, so
Yeah,
let's,
we're good.
okay, cool. So, and I'm going to be using, unusually for me, RStudio to do this because I'm going to be sort of demoing slash trying out Posit Assistant because this is something that a bunch of folks at Posit have been working on recently, and I want to kick the tires and see how it goes. But I think what I'll show you, a lot of this, many of these ideas are going to apply like regardless of what AI assistant you use, but we're going to give it a go and see how it goes. And so you'll notice the way I'm going to start is I have this agents.md file. So this is a file that's going to be used by most coding agents. It's going to be loaded automatically. So this is a good place to put things that you want to apply in your analyses. And so I'm going to put one thing that I know is going to come up, which is use the nano Parquet package for reading Parquet files. Oops, Parquet files. Yeah. I'll talk about what a Parquet file is in a little bit if you haven't heard of them. And then I also promised Gen Z, so please use a Gen Z and emoji. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, now I'm just going to quickly jump over to the Tidy Tuesday. And to get started, I mean, there's lots of automated ways to get this data, but I'm just going to say, hey, Posit AI, can you please download the data from here and save it as Parquet and create a data dictionary and save it in agent. Let's see how it does. Okay, so I'm going to give it permission. So Posit AI has a pretty conservative permission model. It's not going to read anything from the web without your explicit permission. But it tried something that didn't work. It's going to try something else. Now I've got it. And again, it's going to ask me to run R code. So if it's okay to run R code, that's kind of why we're here today. So I'm just going to say, go for it. So you can see it's running a bunch of code. What's it doing? Go to the tidyverse. It read that CSV file. It's just going to take a quick look at it to make sure. And then it's going to save it as a Parquet file. So you can now see you've got NZ Agriculture Parquet. And then it's going to create a data dictionary. Again, asking if I can edit this file. And I'm going to say, go for it. It's not doing a great. It's not doing a great job of giving me Gen Z. Okay, the data set is low key interesting. Okay, got agriculture production stats from New Zealand. Go match 125 within farm areas. Okay, so oops. You might wonder why I used a Parquet file. Do we have any way to do a quick show of hands, Libby?
Yeah,
Apart from
everybody can raise their hand in their, well, actually, maybe not in Zoom. People should have reactions.
Yeah, maybe a reaction.
yeah,
Oh,
let's do a quick thumbs up or raise your hand if you've heard of Parquet files before or used them before.
I'm seeing lots of raised
Okay,
hands.
okay, quite a few. So
I will
if
say I've never used one. I've heard of them, obviously, but nope.
So I'd say like I think Parquet files are superior to CSV files in just about every possible way, except for one, and that's you can't open it in a text editor and look. And that's because it's a binary file format, which makes it much smaller and generally much faster. And the other big advantage to CSV files is that CSV files don't really have types of columns. Like you can kind of figure out if it's a number or a string, but there's no real way to record like it's a date or a date time or a factor. And Parquet files have all of that. So what I do now, whenever I'm doing a data analysis, the first thing I do is create a Parquet file because I know in every subsequent step of the analysis, I'm going to read that in. And I know as a Parquet file, it's going to read in really quickly and it's going to have all of the correct column types. So my factors are going to stay as factors, my dates are going to stay as dates, my date times are going to stay as date times. So really recommend doing this. Also great if you're collaborating with anyone using any other language. Every language has tools for reading Parquet files, Python. You can easily stick them into a DuckDB database. Okay, so I've got my Parquet file. I have got a little data dictionary, and again, this agents.md file. This is going to be given as additional context every single time I use the assistant. So if I start a new session, I can say, what variables are in the NZ agriculture data set? And it shouldn't have to do anything to answer this because it's just going to look at that agents file, that memory file, and it can kind of tell me like what's going on.
Okay, really quickly.
So,
I'm gonna
yep,
pause for 2 seconds. Um, do you happen to be using like AirPods as your sound?
I am.
Can you switch to your computer microphone or something or an external mic and let's see if we can hear you better? You're very gravelly and usually that's AirPod mic
Hmm.
sound.
So give me 2 seconds and I will pull out my
Brief intermission. Do 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 do. Mhm, mhm. Dan says Hadley
microphone.
can zoom in one more time since we're relying on the text in the assistant, and it's a little bit smaller. Yes, James, that was the girl from Ipanema.
Okay.
Yes, I am a part-time sound engineer, Annika. I have to be. I'm doing lots and lots of editing of videos all the time, and I'm like, dang it, we should have addressed sound issues like while we were doing things. Megan thought I was gonna start humming the Doug theme song. It's always in my brain, y'all. And now that we're older, nobody recognizes the Doug theme anymore.
Okay, new microphone. How does
Oh
that
my
sound?
gosh. So much better. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so where were we? So now we've got the data loaded into R. We've got it as a Parquet file. It's 32 kilobytes, so not dealing with a big data set. So it's got 5 variables, low key, no cap. What have we got? We've got the year ended June. Oh, this is the real, oh, really forget this. This is one of the most irritating things about New Zealand. The fiscal year ends in June, which is fiendishly confusing. We've got some agricultural categories. We've got the value, we've got the unit, and we've got the label. So one of the motivating kind of things about this was like used to be when I was growing up, for every human in New Zealand, there are approximately 22 sheep. And now that is like radically dropped to about 4.5 sheep. So let's see if we can do a time series of that. And so one of the suggestions from Posit AI is create a visualization of sheep populations. So let's click on that and see what happens. Okay, so it's going to run some code to look at various different types of sheep. We've got a lot of very sheep specific terminology, which now I'm like, do people know what a hogget is? That's a very sheep specific. Anyway, I think a hogget is a sheep that is 2 years or older. A lamb is less than one. That's just fake. A wether is a male sheep that's been neutered. So you're getting a lot of sheep terminology today.
Hey, we have a
Okay,
question
but
from Derek in the
yes.
chat real quick. Derek says,
Mhm.
I see you're using Claude Sonnet 4.5. When would you switch to Opus?
Uh,
We're not
that
really
is a
doing
good
anything
question.
heavy duty, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably for stuff like this, even haiku is fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like I know for me when I'm like programming, I'm just like Opus 4.5 all the time. It's not worth like for me, I don't really care about the cost, so I would rather just spend whatever it takes. But maybe if we see anything squirrely or looking a bit weird, we will try switching to Opus and see if that does any better.
Okay.
We've got this plot now. Kind of interestingly, I can say, well, like add a line. Line is born 1979. So this is one of these places where like, yes, I do kind of know how to do this in ggplot2. Well, at least I did at some point, but kind of interestingly, I guess like how old was I when and it does, I see. We don't have a yearly data here, so I'm just asking, it's doing a bunch of calculations. Okay, so
Where's the T? Oh my goodness.
here's the Gen Z slang that was promised. Yeah, so basically my entire life, the number of sheep in the sheep population in New Zealand has been dropping. But what I really want to do is also like it's not just the absolute number of sheep that I think is interesting. It's the total is the ratio of sheep to people. So let's see what we can do there. Okay. Showing the share of, and I'm going to try and do what I would do when I'm not doing this live, which is I'm just going to type. And I'm not going to fix any of my typos because I kind of assume that the LLM will like figure it out. So it might be confusing for you as a human, but hopefully the LLM will figure it out.
Hopefully. All right, let's pause for two seconds for questions. Also, Nick says, do we have a Gen Z human in the loop to verify the syntax? Logan says, can confirm. Thanks for being our resident Gen Z, Logan. Okay, so Jared asks, is that just correlation or is Hadley responsible for depleting the New Zealand sheep population? Is this a causal relationship here?
Probably not,
Okay.
uh, as far as I know.
Okay, well, legitimate question. Rob asked, how many bow ties does Hadley own?
Not that many. Well, I don't know, like six bow ties, but I just kind of stopped wearing them. So, because I stopped wearing
Oh.
shirts with collars.
Oh,
Uh,
I thought you were going to say stopped wearing shirts. I was like,
yeah,
questionable
shirts
choices.
with collars.
Rob says he owns over 50. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Okay.
So, so this is interesting. Yeah, the ratio is almost more interesting. But I think let's how did it figure out what the population of New Zealand was? So this is interesting. So the code says get New Zealand population data from a reliable source using World Bank UN data or similar, but for now it just approximated it. Okay, so it just made up the New Zealand population numbers and oh, and it just made up numbers for like some randomly picked sequence of years and then linearly interpolated them. So this is like one of the reasons. like AI is super useful for helping you with your data analyses, but it can make some questionable decisions. So let's get some real New Zealand population data.
While we are
Equals.
asking Sonnet to do that, Russ asked, can the Posit AI assistant use voice to text so people don't have to type and you can just dictate and the computer will convert it to text?
You can not yet. I mean, you can use a dictation, general dictation tool. Um, so I'm just what the Oh, okay, that's fine. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to try and look for New Zealand population data in the current directory. Well, it's not going to find anything. So good luck with that. Um, and now I forgot what was the question again? Oh, voice dictation. Yeah, no, so you can use something like built into your computer or like some other add-on package. This is something we're, I think, pretty interested in. Joe Ching in particular has done some experiments, and it is interesting how using voice changes the way you interact with data. You might have seen my ggBot demo that I did at PositConf last year. Definitely interested in doing more of that. So it seems it's doing a bunch of work. So let's just check in. Okay, look to see if it could use a WB stats package. Okay, then it just, okay, called the World Bank API just directly, which is pretty cool.
Whoa, whoa. It just like, wow.
So it clearly knew to do that. That's which is interesting. And
Just
then
got you a little JSON data and parsed it.
made some question like it just copied and pasted that into the code though. So let's like do this a little bit more systematic. How about you write code to save the JSON file in Posit in create a file. A
Sweet.
folder.
Isabella just put the link to that talk in the chat, by the way. And if you're watching this later, the link is in the description. Just go check the resources.
So I'm gonna, I think one of the most of the what I've been doing here in this is just kind of ephemeral in this chat. But of course, as a data scientist, you want to end up with some reproducible artifacts. I'm telling it to create this New Zealand population file. Okay. And I'm just going to run it because I just want to kind of check what it's doing. It really loves to put, okay. Just, use comment to explain things.
Anna did put the Wikimedia New Zealand data total population in the chat for us, so we can go look at it.
Let's work our way through this.
We have a
Oh, this
few
needs
questions in a
more.
row here while you're working through
Yeah.
things. What's the purpose of the agents.md file and what goes in there?
So this is kind of the memory for the agent. So this is where you put anything that you want the agent to always know every time you start with a clean chat. So I think there's kind of um, two kind of big things here. It's like code style, and I would say data dictionary. Uh,
So it's like a really involved um, system prompt.
yes, so it's exactly a system prompt.
Okay.
Um, it's exactly a system prompt, but it's added automatically. It's combined like the obviously Posit AI has a system prompt of its own. This gets combined automatically. So this is just something that you should be building up as you work with a data set. I think this is a good place to kind of put your basic data dictionary. You might actually want to put that in the README. Um, Now that I think about that, because then that's somewhere something for humans to read as well. Um, Oops, I always forget how you do this. But then you could say So always readme. Because you can also sort of think about there's a sort of balance you want to strike between like what information are you giving specifically to the LLM and what information do you want to share with your colleagues as
Right.
well. And anything that you want to share with another human, you probably want to put that in the README. Um, so I'm just going to keep this stuff more for agents. When I notice a behavior that annoys me, I'm going to add something to this agents to try and stop it from doing that thing. So that's why I
Okay.
said only use comments here. So then I
Well, we
can go
have
don't go through and
a
like delete all of
another couple of
this.
questions that are along the same line. Daniel asked, how does Posit AI in RStudio compare with the current Positron AI assistants? And I think that the answer is that it's like a amalgamation of Databot and Positron
It's
Assistant.
complicated. Like they are going to align. They're going to become the same thing eventually. The big challenge is like Posit AI is basically like a consumer product. And that what that means is like we're going to pick the LLM for you. And we believe that like Claude is the best right now the best LLM for doing writing R code and doing data science. And we're going to pick that for you. And we're going to write all of our tooling to work specifically with Claude. Now, Positron Assistant works inside Positron, which has to get installed inside lots of enterprise customers. And enterprises, big companies, for obvious reasons, don't want to be sending their data out to some like random LLM on the internet. They want to be using their own internal LLM. And companies have done standardized on all sorts of different LLM providers, sometimes the big ones like Claude and Anthropic, or they're going through Azure or Databot, or Databricks or Snowflake or something. Sometimes they'll pick some like total wackadoo thing and have chosen to inflict that on their employees. And Positron Assistant has to work with all of those. So in the long run, they're going to come together and just be one tool, but it's taking a little while to figure out how to do all of that.
Okay, well, let's get back to the code with our last question, which is, will all the code generated by Posit Assistant be stored in the session somehow to let somebody review what the agent generated? This is a great question I get every time we talk about this is like, where is all of this code that it's creating in this side panel going? How do you keep track of it? Tell
Yeah, it
me.
does. It does not. All of the code you should. This is purely ephemeral code. You should treat this as the same way as the code that you type into Active. So, like for example, what I've done here is explicitly asked it to save it in an R file. This is the file that I would then check in to get. This is the thing that I can start with a clean session, run this, and now I've recreated that Parquet file again. So nothing has changed in the sense of like how are you going to record what you've discovered in your analysis? You should still be creating R files and QMDs or R Markdown files. That's still your responsibility. And I think
It's
it
just
still
like,
makes sense to be like starting like clean sessions again to ensure that you do have all that information tracked
okay.
correctly.
So instead of
And so
you putting the code in an R file, it's an agent putting it in the R file. And for anybody who wasn't here in the very beginning, it did ask Hadley's permission to do that. It was like, hey, can I write R code? And Hadley was like, yes, you can write R code. Okay.
And so I've
Excellent
added,
questions.
yeah, and so since I've restarted the session, it's going to do this again. It's going to ask me for permission again. I think currently it's a bit too, it's always asking you for permission and you're just like, go ahead and do it. I trust you. We That's something we still need to, I think, do better at. But again, like everything I do in this, like everything I learn, I want to record this somewhere. So now I've said, like now my data dictionary has been updated. I've got this Parquet file. I've got the source. I've got the description. I've got the column types. Got this key context, which is going to that because I actually think that's important. And then I've got this New Zealand population data set. So now again, like I think good practice. I'm always restarting my R session, restarting my chat session, and now I can say like create a plot that shows how the ratio of sheep to people has changed. So you can see because I said in the agents.md, like there's a data dictionary in the readme.md, like it knows to do that. It's gonna, okay, I'm gonna start by reading the readme, like always a good sign. Then it's gonna look for sheep data again. Uh, it's picked total sheep. It's done. It's written a bunch of code and it's created this plot. Now, again, like this plot is ephemeral. Like you should think of this chat pane like you're typing stuff in the console. If I want to keep this, I should say like, okay, make me a Quarto report about this. Okay, it's going to give me a report. It kind of offers the sections, and I'm just going to say go for it. It's going to slap. So that's good.
Are you open to a pause to ask more questions?
Sure.
Let's do it. Okay. So we have some questions that have come in, um, mostly about Posit Assistant. One is from David. Does Posit Assistant also support skills files?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think either it does or it will do in the near future because it is the skills file. So skills files, basically the idea is instead of like dumping absolutely everything into one giant agents file, you can kind of say, well, you could basically say the skills work something like that. Like if you need to know how to linear regression, read linear regression.md. And then Posit AI will only read that if you need to do a linear regression. That's basically in a nutshell how skills, that's all skills is. It's kind of like a reference to a markdown file that will get read on demand only when it's needed.
Okay, perfect. Megan asked, were we always able to add agent.md in Positron too?
I mean, always like, yes, always in the scheme of AI, that's like a month. Yes, this has always been true.
So much is
Uh,
changing so quickly in the world of like AI assistants that always is maybe like a few weeks ago when things started. So another one is from Becca. Did Hadley choose the name agents like agents.md, or does each session have an agents file similar to having a README?
so the agents.md, this is kind of oh my God, I'm blanking on a convention. This is a convention that lots of different AI agents will look in this. So Posit Assistant definitely will. I think if you use like Claude Code in the terminal, it will also look there. If you use like Codex or Gemini, a lot of these other ones are standardizing on this agents.md file because for a while, like yeah, AI for a long time ago in AI times, we were ending up, it looked like you'd have a Claude.md, a Gemini.md, a Codex.md, like, and then the people decided that that was ridiculous and we should just have one kind of MD. But I do think this idea of like telling it to read your README is a good principle because if the README is aimed for humans, like most of that context you want the agent to have as well. And I think one of the things that like LLMs like make us do more of that is good for us, and we always should have been doing more, is like writing down more of these assumptions, being very clear. So when we're both working with like our AI collaborators and our human collaborators, like everyone knows what we're talking about. We're all on the same page.
Yeah. Okay, great. We have so many more questions, but let's go forward in our code just a little bit and then we'll stop and do some more questions.
So let's fix one thing that drives me bonkers about AI generated code, which is do not use the same animal. This where design defaults look good. Don't working. Okay, so this is the type of thing you can put in your agents file, like your pet peeves. And now I can say fix the theme. And then hopefully this will be like, yep, okay. So it's going to propose a change and it's going to delete that. Thank you. Yeah. It's also nice, like no, it's always going to apologize for screwing up, even if it didn't do anything wrong. That's okay. So I've got this QMD. Now again, like this is the thing that's going to persist over time. Um, I don't love the fact that it's like added all of this text. But I do like the fact that it's talked about the data sources. The data prep was pretty simple. It extracted the sheep data, aligned it with population data, which is interesting. It made this decision to add one, which is probably, uh, I don't know, that's maybe you should be really like taking the kind of middle, like do some kind of linear interpolation. I don't think that's going to change the message overall, so I'm not gonna care about that.
Is any of the stuff that I put in this report in Gen Z speak, or is it only what it's returning to you in the chat?
Oh, interesting.
I don't think it is. I'm just curious. There, I don't see any no caps. I
Yeah,
don't
that's a
see any
good.
fires. Okay.
That's disappointing. I think what happened, however, is you'll see that if we scroll up here. Oh, okay. So it used a skill. So it must support skills because there are some baked in skills. And one of those skills is the Quarto report skill. And I suspect all of this skill probably says something about the language. Let's see if I can. So this is the skill used for creating reports. And I bet, oh, oh, that's a bug. It doesn't show the whole things. It just does the dot, dot, dot. Anyway, so I bet there's something in there, but we can kind of override that by being more explicit. Hey.
Okay. While we are pausing for a ridiculous, unhinged reason,
Mhm.
let's ask some more questions. And also, hey, Garrick. Garrick's in the chat. Garrick Aiden Bowie. Okay. Let's hop over and check out what we've got. Noor had asked, can Posit Assistant create a renv as well? So, like, would you use an R environment renv with Posit Assistant?
That is a good question. I would imagine it could. I'm just going to tell it to use Gen Z Flyer too. So we've got a fully Gen Z compliant report. Absolutely kind of thank you. So I don't know. We'll let it finish creating this report, but I bet if you say please,
Oh my
okay, well, I'm
goodness.
just gonna let's just finish this, redo the report. Oh, it didn't
I
didn't
didn't like
install.
something.
Really.
You need to install.
Gen Z Flyer is not part of my day-to-day workflow and is
It's not?
it's not part of the tidyverse.
Isabella's
Let's
cat
rebuild
entered the
it.
chat. Oh my gosh.
Oh no. Okay, well, it's failed. AI has failed.
Oh, it's okay. It's still in
This
beta.
is disappointing. Well, I mean, and this is a good reason as to why like using Git with these AI assistants is so important because I've got like no way to roll back to a version that worked. But let's actually, whoops, let's roll that to regular. So maybe it's going to have a go at converting it back, but it's not like rolling it back in time. It's translated dplyr to gen zplyr, and now it's translating gen zplyr back to dplyr. So you can imagine how like errors are going to potentially like propagate with
Propagate,
that.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
So
Well, Brent had asked, is Claude also the best for Python code? What a good question. I think Isabella tried to answer this one in the chat, but I would love to hear from everybody what they think um, is the best for each of the languages that they use. Hadley, do you have any
I
opinion?
don't know if it's best, but like I have strong opinions about R code. I do not have strong opinions about Python code.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's good enough. I'm sure it's really good. I'm sure it's like fine.
I find it's
Um,
fine. I find both Claude and GPT are pretty good at writing Python code. I find that Claude is probably better at writing R code than GPT, though. Um, okay, Tony had asked if you add a behavior or a requirement to agents.md, does it take on the fly as you continue prompting? Or do you need to restart or refresh something at some point in order for it to like reabsorb the stuff that you've added to agents.md? And I love this question because I have the same one.
so we actually kind of saw an example of that because remember I changed the agents file to say do not use this. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the same chat session, I said fix the theme. And you can see like I literally saw the memory file. Like I'm gaslighting Posit AI here, right? Because at the time it wrote this code, it didn't know I didn't want it to use the minimal. But because the agents file kind of gets re-injected at the very top of the chat history as part of the system prompt, every single time, like it feels bad for messing up. So yeah, you do not need to restart the uh you do not need to restart the chat. But obviously, like it's only this agents file, like it isn't gonna reread the mark readme every time, so you'd have to ask it to do that, or it might figure that out if there's in the data set.
Okay, great. We have one more question from Anna, but I think that it will move us forward in our code because she had asked, like, what if you asked the agent why something happened? Like, why did that ratio fall off? Um, because she
That
was
is a
saying, my
good
guess is that,
question.
like, would it look on the internet? Would it go try to
I
Google
think
why did the ratio fall off?
I'm going to give you my prediction, and then we'll see what it is. And I think
Okay.
it's just gonna guess. It's going to use like its kind of background knowledge slash it's going to hallucinate an answer, and we're not really going to know which is which. But let's ask it. Why
But
did
it's
the
not gonna
ratio?
like write Bayesian code to figure out, do a whole
Yeah,
causal analysis for us, probably.
yeah, and we don't have the data for that. So
Right.
let's see. Okay, well, I mean, this is a good place to start. Like, is it because the sheep population increased or because did the sheep population decrease or the human population increase?
So it's sticking to the data, we think, at this point.
So it's sticking to well, okay, so it's sticking to the data here. So it picked some random, okay, it's digging into the data. And then it says, look at key years. And it just picked 1982, 1985, 19, 2000, and 2025. I've got no idea why it picked those years. Not evenly spaced.
No, not at all.
Very not evenly spaced. And then it tells me that 1980s were the turning point. Okay. It's doing some peak. Okay, now it's giving me some speculation. Economic reforms. Uh, Okay, now this is my New Zealand historical knowledge of sheep agriculture in New Zealand up to this. I think that's correct. Like I do, like I know that yeah, like New Zealand agriculture used to be heavily subsidized by the government, and then they dropped those subsidies in favor of like more free market economics. I have no information about the global wool market. Okay, well, this is a question: dairy confusion and land use changes. This is this seems a little implausible to me because sheep basically sheep are fine on steep hills. So most of the sheep country in New Zealand are like pretty steep hills, and you can't put cows on steep hills. So I'm like skeptical about this. But again, no export. But I could say, yeah, okay, so let's see if we've got some data here. Look at the dairy cattle numbers to see if they rose as sheep fell.
I think it's
Um,
important to point out as we're going through this that, like, if you did not know how to code in R, you would not be able to filter through and quickly look back at the code that Posit Assistant is writing and tell whether or not it's BS. And so whenever somebody asks me, like, do I still need to know how to code? I always say yes, because even if you are using an LLM, you have to be like, you're training an intern right now. You're training like a wildly talented intern who is just like super unhinged and chaotic, and like you still have to look at everything that they do. I figured I would ask your opinion on that, Hadley. Do you still need to know how
yeah.
to code in
Oh,
2026?
yeah. Uh, just on the unhinged intern, like, yes, this is an unhinged intern type thing. This is not literally the smoking gun. This is showing that there are lots more, like, oh God, like, do not ever use the double y-axis. We are embarrassing.
Does using caps lock increase the likelihood that the LLM is going to listen to your agents.md file? Does it know you're yelling at
No, there's
it?
like a lot of mythology around this. Like you can also, people have said like if you use a double y-axis, I will fine you $200. Like there's all
Oh my
this
gosh.
mythology around you. There's like you can like threaten it. Like
Oh my gosh, like do LLMs have loss aversion? Yeah, well, good luck
it,
trying to use a double axis in ggplot anyway.
well,
It
it
is
did it.
built to
It did
stop
it.
you. I
It
know.
did
It's
it.
it's built to stop you and it still did it.
Yeah.
Annika was saying I'm enjoying Hadley's sheep knowledge. Me too. Who knew?
Who knew I had so much sheep knowledge?
I have secret cattle knowledge too because my family owns a
See, there's
cattle
another
ranch.
another doesn't want to be fined $200. The people have done it like you can
Oh
also do the
shoot.
opposite, like if you never use double since
David says caps lock does not make a difference to the AI, but it sure feels better to use them sometimes. Yup.
yeah, I'm not convinced it doesn't make a difference because it is like this shouting and LMs are trained on like human knowledge. There was a I don't know if I can what's this it's like Max
Oh, we're gonna fine
what's his
Russ
name?
at least $200 for his sheep pun.
Uh, I can't remember. Why am I blanking on his name is Max, and he has a AI blog. That's
Oh my gosh, Isabella just pointed out that the subtext on the graph says sheep really said it's giving Dara error and dipped. Oh my goodness. You got Gen Z in your chart. I
and I
love
included an emoji in the chart
I
label.
love it. Skull emoji.
That's actually like that's the fact that the emoji works like that was like Thomas Peterson like spent like literally a year of his life on the entire font stack to make that possible.
Really? Thank you,
Um,
Thomas Lynn Peterson. You're the best.
but it's also yeah like the now that we've got rid of the double y-axis that imaginary crossing point no longer exists. And you can kind of see like yeah I mean yes there was a rise in the number of dairy cattle but nowhere near enough to for that to be explanatory.
In the
So
context of millions of animals. So I wanted
yes.
to do a quick shout out real quick because John in the chat had given a shout out to Jenny Richmond who submitted this data set. Um, if you do not know John Harmon is the one who is like doing all the stuff behind the scenes, making the Tidy Tuesday repo work and what it is. He does a massive amount of work. Huge like round of applause in the chat and the internet in general for John and all the work that he does. Jenny Richmond has submitted so many data sets to Tidy Tuesday. She might have the record for like number of times I've seen the same name come up as a curator. So thank you so much to Jenny. Also, Jenny's just a delight if you get to talk to her and meet her. Do that because she's amazing and fun. Um, and she is also in New Zealand, so super, super like close to home data for her. And then I wanted to also let you guys know that we're actually going to have John Harmon here with us at the data science lab. He is going to be here on March 10th talking about how to submit a TidyTuesday dataset. He put together some like curation functions for TidyTuesday, so it's so much easier to submit now. We're all going to get together and submit datasets after that, y'all, right? Okay, back to you, Hadley. And I had a question in the chat from Russ that was like, could Hadley have done this faster without an AI? What do you think?
Uh, this is the blog Max. Well, I can't. Okay, let's just find a prompt. This is just an interesting. I'll just Slack that to you as well so you can share it. But this is like an interesting. He experimented with all these ways of like offering a tip. Like I think there's a bunch of like threats further down. Yeah, like threatening to kill it, give it COVID-19, make it gain weight, fire it. It turns out these mostly don't do anything, but it was a fun analysis.
I love it. Oh, and also, John wanted to point out like there are people obviously who have submitted way more. Tom Mock started Teddy Tuesday. John does a billion of them, and then also Tracy Teal. So obviously, we have there's internal contributors and outside contributors. We're so thankful for all the work that all of you do.
So yeah, in this case, could I have done this faster with an LLM? Like probably. I just wanted to show you one case. I did another Tidy Tuesday.
Your screen dimmed a
Um,
little bit. Oh wait, it's coming back. There we go.
oh, it was just that's weird. Oops, all that. Like I looked at this the previous Tidy Tuesday, which is the astronomy picture of the day. And one of the things I did with it is like a text clustering on the image descriptions. And like I could have figured this out eventually, but just getting something that really, really quickly um really, really quickly giving me the results without me having to remember all the details of like how do I use tidy text to do text clustering. That was like super, super appealing. And the other thing I did, I think, so I just want to show like it chooses the number of clusters.
And as a reminder, this is last week's analysis, right?
This is a couple of weeks ago
A couple
now.
of weeks ago.
But
Okay.
so when you do cluster analysis, right, you have to choose the number of clusters, and there's a bunch of heuristics. But I think whenever you do cluster analysis, you want to do a little bit of experimenting. Like, are my results like robust to different numbers of clusters? And so what I did, I was like, okay, uh, like make me a Shiny app that lets me explore that.
This is one of my favorite uses for Shiny apps, y'all. I make apps all the time that let me step through something and look at it. Like one time I was doing a little project where I was classifying blue sky posts. And so I was like, I'm going to pre-classify these with an LLM, and then I want to build a Shiny app and have the Shiny app feed me each one and tell me like what it had assigned it, and then I can decide whether or not it was something. I was trying to classify replies versus posts, basically, just really basic stuff just to see if I could do it. It was amazing.
And like the ability to write like a Shiny app like this in like, 2 or 3 minutes. This is really cool. Like, yes, I could have written this Shiny app. I probably never would have before because it would have felt like the cost
Wouldn't have been
benefit
worth it.
trade-off like wasn't there. But now like just give it a go and with an LM, like it's not a super complicated Shiny app and that's fine.
And it's a
So
throwaway, so it doesn't have to be pretty. Just James Wade's talk at PosiConf last year was about this, like throwaway shiny apps, why you should build them and throw them away.
yeah, and because the cost of like writing a bunch of R code is now much cheaper than it ever was before. Um, yeah, do it. And that reminds me of a question we got to earlier, where it was asked earlier that I don't think I answered, which is like, does it still make sense to learn how to code in 2026?
Yeah, Ben had asked that again in the chat. Like, I want to hear Hadley's answer to that.
And I want to say, like, I think yes, I think understanding code is still really important. I do think the trade-off between the ability to read code and ability to write code has changed because now we can like generate so much code quickly with an LLM, like your ability to read that code quickly, figure out, understand what it's doing and if it's the right thing, and then either like make small tweaks by hand or tell the LLM to fix it. But if you don't know what it's doing, that just seems like such a dangerous place to be in. Like if you don't have some sense of like, you still to do a good cluster analysis, you still need to understand like, oh, actually the number of clusters is really important. And there's no magic way to figure out the correct number of clusters. So you have to know, like the LM will just give you some decent answer. You need to go to and like interrogate that further. So still that like subject matter knowledge, that ability to read code, that ability to like go in. Let's see if I can quickly switch back. Um, like
Anytime
you
text-based
still want to
queries.
create these data sets and the ability to like go in there and actually modify them directly is super important because you know being able to type a one instead of a two there, like that's much lower effort than saying to the LLM, hey, can you please go to this specific plot and do make this change for me? Like if you know exactly like but one of the advantages of code is that it's like, well, it's this precise language and LLMs are great at going from your vague human language to this precise code language. But if you already have that precision in mind, trying to tell an LLM what to do in human language to make a precise change, that's just like, that's inefficient. So I
Yeah.
think like code is still important, but your ability to write code, I think, is less important than it used to be. Your ability to read code is still more important, and your ability to like ask good questions like even more important.
I will say we have 2 minutes left, and I would love to end with just like one more philosophical question from Ben, because I've been thinking about this a lot, which is if one of the best ways to learn how to read code is to write code, what's going to happen if we're writing it less?
Yeah, I don't know. Like one of the things, like we're gonna have to learn new ways to make new tools to, new ways of doing this. I think one of the things that's always sort of intrigued me, I read this article, I don't know, like maybe 10 years ago about Masters of Fine Arts in programming. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, I can't remember if it was like a real program or just kind of a speculation, but this idea, like, when you go and become an artist, you spend a bunch of time, obviously you do spend a bunch of time like making art, but also like looking at the work of like old masters and attempting to copy that by hand. And of course, you could take a photograph of a famous painting that's going to give you like an exact reproduction, but recreating it by hand, the things you do in like art and design programs where you like collectively talk through things. I think all of these skills, like we're gonna have to figure out how to apply them to data science and programming today, like super duper important.
All right, wonderful. Well, we have literally 1 minute left, so I will say let's wrap up and everybody say thank you to Hadley for joining us. This was so much fun. If you want to sign up for the waitlist for Posit AI stuff, Nick has put that in the chat actually, posit.co/products/AI. You can sign up for the waitlist for this private beta for the tool that Hadley is using. And then, of course, if you would like to go explore all of the AI tools in Positron, those are all open for you to explore. You can go check those out right now. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I hope that you will join us on March 10th with John Harmon, who is going to help us learn how to submit TidyTuesday datasets. Don't forget that on March 3rd, we are not meeting, but there is going to be a webinar with Satish from Johnson & Johnson, who's going to be talking about the sort of IT perspective of scaling positron into Johnson & Johnson as a sort of all-in-one IDE where everybody can be happy with using the tools they want to use. All right, Hadley,
Can
thank
I
you
can I
so
add just
much.
one extra plug for Posit
Go for
AI
it.
right now?
Yeah.
That is it's a currently a free beta because we're trying to understand like what's helpful for people. And so it is like free. So if you do want to like learn a little bit of like AI powered data analysis with like no money down, at least for a little while, like we can't do this forever because we are a business. But at least if you want to get your toes wet in AI supported, empowered data science, like Posit AI is a great way to do that right now.
All right, fantastic. And I will see everybody on Thursday at the Data Science Hangout. I will also see you next week at Rainbow RConf, where I am going to be with Dami Pack doing a trivia thing. If you are attending Rainbow RConf, I'll see you there. Bye, everybody. See you on Thursday and see you next week. Bye.